Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reds Rundown podcast, hosted by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob. He's Joe, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Joe, I can say this with confidence. How are you doing? How's your weekend?
Oh, it's been good. The Reds saved it. A dog had surgery on Thursday, and what do you
Mm-hmm.
know? The Reds, when I'm cooped up at home for the most of the last couple days, have been winning some baseball games that we did not expect whatsoever. So happy for
Yeah.
that.
Nice little preview there from Joe, as always. And that will lead us straight into our question of the day. It's a very simple one. It's 3 words. Are we back? Let us know in the comments below. Let us know on Twitter, wherever you're listening, Spotify, Apple Podcast, all that jazz. Please make sure to let us know. And I think Joe and I are going to answer that a little bit later as well. As always, we don't want to dive too deep into the question of the day yet. Give you guys some time to really marinate on it. Think about it, if that's going to be your answer as yes or no. But it's time for us to head into the Padres and Dodgers series. To our first 2 of 3 series at home. It was a 2-0 series victory, or not series victory, 2-0 first game of the series against the Padres. Andrew Abbott was amazing. 7 innings, scattered 4 hits, only 2 strikeouts, which is something that we'll talk about a little bit later as well when we get into the starting pitchers. Fernando Cruz and Alexis Diaz come in, shut the door without much of an issue. Ellie De La Cruz driving in. Some big runs there. Jacob Hurtubise getting his first run. RBI scored. Had a pretty solid game as well. Move on to the Wednesday game, because if you remember, we had that Monday off. Big loss for the Reds, 7-3 game. Candy hit a home run. Felt like maybe they'd be able to stick in this game, and then all of a sudden the wheels just fell off on Nick Martinez start yet again. Not great. Jim just was not great. And yes, I know his name is Joe. It was a reference. But we continue on here with a 6-4 loss in extras for the Reds as well. Really felt like they had this one, honestly. They were fighting the whole way. Sam Moll comes in and has a very uncharacteristic game for him. Maybe his confidence is slightly shot because the Reds keep sending him down to AAA for some stupid reason. But again, Hurtubise having a nice little game here. Ellie getting the hit. Martini hitting the home run to tie things up. You think, hey, this afternoon game's going pretty well for us. And like we said, Moll was not able to get the job done. But the ever prevalent and the one who seemingly always gets it done, Buck Farmer came in, continues to have a very nice season. Then we head into the weekend. I think Joe and I are both expecting the worst. We said we needed at least 2 wins for the season not to be completely over. 3 wins would feel like, hey, maybe, the season's not over. 4 wins this week, I don't think either of us really could have ever dreamt for. The Reds come out on that Friday game wearing their Connect jerseys. Feels like they always play better in those jerseys for some reason. The crowd's always electric. They come out and they win a slugfest, which they haven't done much, with a 6-run 5th inning and a grand slam from Jonathan India, who a lot of people have been worried his slugging percentage was dipping below 300 before this series. So pretty horrible, to be honest with you. Graham Ashcraft didn't have the best start, but the bullpen picked him up. Got the job done, and the Reds were able to be winners thanks to, as well, a Spencer Steer home run early on. We head into the Saturday game, and Hunter Green was absolute fire, absolutely electric. 6 innings, 5 runs, or 5 hits, only 1 run given up, 5 strikeouts, lowers his ERA to a 3.06. Hurtubise does well. Steer hits another home run, back-to-back games. Benson hits an absolute missile, and the Reds take it 3-1. And you're like, oh my God, the Reds have actually won a series, snapping their, I think it was 8 or 9 series streak against arguably the best team in baseball. Then on Sunday, the Reds take care of business once more, winning 4-1. Nick Martini with a big hit, Jonathan India with another big hit, getting a ton of RBIs this weekend for our boy Indy. It was a bullpen day. Brent Suter goes and gets the beginning of the lineup. Nick Martinez comes in, only gives up 1 hit over 4 1/3. Absolutely great stuff from him. Carson Spires looked amazing as well. You thought he was going to close it out. Things got a little hairy, and I'm glad David Bell decided go get Alexis Diaz, get him his 10th save of the year. Looks like Diaz is starting to kind of find his way as well. And Joe, the Reds sweep the Dodgers. They go 4-2 on the weekend. A season I think we can both say is officially not over at this point. They are now 7 games under 500, which everybody's probably sitting there like, well, that's still pretty bad. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, it's not great. We're not going to deny that. But the fact that we were saying, hey, just survive May and see what happens, that seemingly is what they potentially do. We still have 3 more games left in May, so I'm not going to, be too hyped. But, Joe, they are now only 3.5 games out of the wild card, which is kind of crazy to think about. So, season, I would say, officially not over. I don't know if we're back yet, but the season is officially not over with potentially one of the biggest sweeps I can really remember for the Reds.
The first time they swept the Dodgers at home since like 2013, I believe. Very good baseball that was being played in that series specifically. I'm with you. They're not quite back yet, and especially a lot of it has to go with injuries that we're going to talk about later too. It's hard to sustain success when there's less margin for error. But they've shown you the flashes of what they can do, which really feels good. I was really impressed. Andrew Abbott with the Padres series at the start of it. That was really awesome. Jacob Hurtubise come up, one of 3 players in history to be from West Point, and killing it right now for us, getting new life into the lineup. It's pretty awesome to see.
Mm-hmm.
And then specifically, Hunter Green too. I think we said, before the season, I said he was going to be a star, and he has absolutely been that, and especially when he has no run support too. And just a key thing from Saturday too, John Smoltz was in the booth. You always got to listen to what John Smoltz says. Not everyone likes him, but he does know pitching very, very well. Mm-hmm. Just talking about his splitter and how his arm angles were great, his arm action was great, and just how it really is a weapon against these hitters, especially the left-handers. And he got Shohei on the first 2 at-bats of the game to strike out on that splitter. So that could be a real weapon for him. I love his development. I love that he's kept and pretty much all the starting pitchers, for that matter, have kept their consistency in terms of pitching well while the bats have been very cool. Now, the other part of this too is like I do think this series. I don't want to say it's a fluke, but like in the ways that we were losing all those games in the past couple of weeks, the same thing was happening, right? So against the Dodgers, we scored 9 runs in a game where we give up 6. We win that one. Usually we lose those games. We score 7 runs. The other team scores 8 runs. We have a 1 game per series. We score a lot of runs. That's just how it's been the last month or so. The rest of the series, we've held them to 1 run. That usually will get you the win, but it just doesn't work out. Like we have one game where we score runs. And even in the last 2 games of the series, we scored 3 and 4 runs. A lot of times we lose those games, and it's not because of the starting pitchers. That's just how it's been going. So, again, not a fluke, but let's see some more consistency here. Maybe instead of scoring 9 runs in the first game, let's try to score like 5 throughout. That's not realistic, but I think we talked about what the record would be if they scored even 4 runs a game this season every game. Let's start with that first. But that's what I noticed the most is there's not a huge shift in how we have played. In terms of as a team, in those regards, we have some big outputs and we have some pretty much duds. There's no consistency there, but I have liked seeing some of these guys set up like Hurtubise, Spencer Steer getting that home run in the Dodgers series, Jonathan India grand slam, and also poking a single to right when it was really important too. So it still feels like a roller coaster right now, up and down. But maybe if they level out a little bit, Rob, then this season could be saved overall, and we could be back in a couple of weeks if they can kind of just level it out and beat some of the teams coming up on the schedule.
Yeah, and the thing is you think normally for them to win a series against the Dodgers, you would imagine that Elly De La Cruz would be the main reason why. He was pretty silent. He had 1 hit the entire series. The Reds as a whole have finally started hitting as well. They've raised their batting average almost 10 points in the last week and a half. So I know that for a lot of people, they're still hitting only 218 or whatever as a team. I understand that, but we'll be going over injury stuff here in a little bit, and we'll dive a little deeper into the Hunter Green and the starting pitching as well, as Joe alluded to. But Joe, this was such a needed series, and this team I think thrives a lot on emotions and confidence specifically, right? I think when this team is confident and able to have some fun and play at their best, that's how they play at their best, I should say. A series win against the Dodgers, a sweep against the Dodgers at home, If that doesn't fire them up, I don't know what else will. Because that's, again, it's not like they faced Yamamoto, right? Like they handled Ohtani for the last 7 games that they play. All 7 games they played, Ohtani was relatively meh, to be honest with you. Mookie Betts, I think, was the only really big hitter of theirs that did a ton of damage. Otherwise, Ohtani and Freeman, we pretty much held them in check almost the entire season series. So huge shout out to the pitching, and it's nice to see that the hitting is starting to get better. We're going to end up skipping over him mostly just because I think we have a lot of other things to talk about, but I do think that Jacob Hurtubise, I think, has potentially earned a much longer look. Now, is he ever going to be like an everyday starter? No. When TJ Friedl comes back, I think he's going to fill the role that Hurtubise is currently, I guess filling. Is going to be that he's currently doing. But it's been really nice to see him. He's a nice slap hitter. He's a contact hitter. Weirdly, he's not known for striking out a lot, but against some of these better pitchers so far, he's been striking out a decent bit. But he's not known for power, but that's okay. If he's slapping and getting the ball, making contact to move runners over. He had a bunt on Sunday, I think it was, as well, which was nice. He's been playing decent defense. Let's give Stu Fairchild real quickly a shout out as well. That man not only saved a home run, he's been making a ton of plays in the outfield. He's been hitting pretty decently as well. Again, it's just, I was telling, I think it was my dad the other day, it just felt like the Reds were at their worst at the very worst time. Sometimes when teams are at their worst, they can eke out extra wins here or there because they're maybe not playing like the best teams in baseball. The Reds were facing unbelievable lineups when their lineup was doing absolutely nothing at the absolute worst times. So, look, we're not like, again, I want to be very clear. We're still 7 games under. It's nice that we're only 3.5 games out, but let's be completely real here. They still have a lot of work to do.
Absolutely, and I just one thing about Hurtubise, I do think you're right. He has earned a better look. He kind of reminds me, not in the way he plays necessarily, but in just how we saw them coming up, like of TJ Friedl. TJ Friedl was never this like great prospect. The fact that he's worked out is honestly incredible and a testament to him and his work ethic. Hurtubise, like same thing. Like he's not like he didn't kill the ball in the minor leagues, but he slowly worked his way up. There were times where Friedl did kill the ball in minor leagues, but he got I think his last season at AAA he hit 264. So it's not like you're expecting that guy to come up and hit 300 like he has shown he can do. So I do think there's a larger role for Hurtubise. And then I think this team, like you said, I'm not like willing to say we're all the way back, that we're, they were definitely going to make it. But you're right. If we can keep it kind of close to 500, if we can get it close to 500 in these next couple weeks, and then we get some other guys back, that makes you think you can make a push from like, hey, this is like, we're going to push it forward now. But it also speaks to how important this week was, because again, if you're 20, if we like we predicted, at least I did it, Rob, 21-32 was what I had the record down at the end of this week. That is a whole lot of ground to make up more than if you sweep this series. So we might be looking back, and I'm probably gonna remember this at the end of the year of like, hey, if we just miss the playoffs, or if we make the playoffs and get pushed in, like this week might be the reason why, because we were up against it, backs against the wall, everyone's hurt. We ended up beating the best team in baseball, at least from a talent perspective, at our home stadium. And then we also won 1 game against the Padres, which, those 4 wins really flipped the script when we just have been, really beat up this year and had not hitting the ball. And just, the bullpen has been an issue at times, but it's good to be in the spot we are now.
Yeah, if you guys can't hear it, I'm truly just going to go out on a limb and say it. This series saved their season, period. We will look back on it, and regardless of how the rest of the year goes, this is a season-defining series for them currently, at least. We'll have to see down the stretch, obviously, but right now, there's not been a more important series than this one for our Redlegs, and I'm really not that it matters, but I am proud of them. Seriously, like they fought. I actually think David Bell made a lot of really good decisions this weekend, which is, still frustrating overall, but maybe it's because Pagan's not available for him to ruin the game with. So, sorry, it's not just Emilio Pagan. I needed to throw that in there.
Rob really hates Emilio Pagan, man. Oh boy. There's been, I get that Pagan's been one of the issues for us, but he's made some decisions with the lineup.
He's made way worse decisions
with the bullpen. bullpen, and you just have a thing for Emilio Pagan. We're gonna have to fix this. We're gonna have to do a séance or something and get everything cleared out. So, oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
maybe Emilio can come on and talk with me about it and make me apologize to him in person. I would do it. I would do it in a heartbeat. I'm sure he's a super great guy, honestly, and he's had a pretty solid career. He gives me anxiety every single time he comes in. But we'll move on.
Yeah, no.
We'll move on. So I told Joe I wanted to talk about the rest of the schedule. I was going over it with my uncle yesterday. I will say he placed some pretty fun bets on the Reds after this series, so we'll have to see if maybe he's just riding a little bit high. But you get the Cardinals and the Cubs. You get the Rockies, who outside of their one winning streak, they've been just god awful all year. You get the Cubs again for 4 at home. You get the Guardians, the Brewers, but then really and truly things start to lighten up. The Pirates, the Red Sox, everybody thinks are good there. Honestly, Pirates have not been good. You get the Cardinals as well. You head into July. Yes, the Yankees will be solid, but they're still a very beatable team if you can pitch around Judge well. You get a huge series at home. I mean, this is a huge stretch. Tigers, Rockies, and Marlins, all very beatable teams before the All-Star break. I think that this stretch between now and the All-Star break could really, really put them in a good position to make a run, because then you're getting the Nationals, you're getting the Braves without Acuna, the Rays, the Cubs again at home, Giants. You get 4 games against the Marlins on the road. Again, they are going to be the team that sells and just gets absolutely just beaten to a pulp for the rest of the year. And then you finally face the Brewers, Cardinals again. Small stretch against the Royals and the Blue Jays, I'm not too worried about. Pirates, Athletics. Like my point is, Joe, I'm not trying to do it all, but I'm just trying to point out to everybody that really outside, in my opinion, of the Brewers, the Braves, and some games against the Cubs throughout the rest of the year, the Reds have a pretty easy schedule. Like, especially compared to what we just went through. Now, guys, look, they just swept the Dodgers. Things happen, but I do think it's worth pointing out that we have faced more first-place teams and had more games against first-place teams than anybody else in baseball. We're doing it with half a lineup at best most of the time, and the other half being a bunch of sophomore players who have never had to go through those struggles and kind of figure out this stuff during the season. We've been getting mostly great starting pitching. The bullpen's been on and off. Like, it sounds weird, but like this could have been way worse. I think that you would agree with that. This could have really, like, we could have been on like a 10 or 15 game losing streak throughout this. They found ways to scratch their way to wins in most of these series, at least one, to kind of keep them from, being just completely blown out the whole time. And then they did what they needed to, and they're gonna get their comeuppance, if you want to use that word for it, Joe. They really are. I mean, these are all now teams that they can absolutely win against. It's not that the NL West isn't like beatable. They are, but it's just when you go on 2 West Coast road trips in 1 month, and then you're facing the Orioles and the Dodgers, my 2 favorite teams to go to the World Series this year, to be honest with you. Like, I know they got to win those series in the future, but let's give them a chance once people are actually back and healthy, and we're not relying on the Mike Fords and the Nick Martinis and even the Jacob Hurtubys, who I like, but like, we should not be relying on them to get our big hits right now, and we've had to. So I wanted to just point that out, Joe.
No, it's a good point. I specifically think, even more so than the second half of the schedule, these next few weeks are critical from May 31st or May 27th, whatever it is today, till the All-Star break. You mentioned the Guardians, one of the best teams in baseball. The Brewers, we have those 2 series in the middle of June. We have a series against the Yankees. But the rest of the series, we should win most of them. We should, if there's a 4-game series, we should at least split. The goal here has to be to get to 500 before the All-Star break.
Yes.
Because we're going into a world where, we don't know. We're going to talk about injuries here. We don't know who's coming back and when. Time changed. Are people, when they come back, are they going to be rusty, whether it's suspension or injury? I think even with this banged up lineup, if we can spend the next couple months here just chipping away, getting back to 500, that is huge. And then after that, if we get guys back, let's push forward towards like actually competing and not just being 500. But digging yourselves out of a 7-game hole is going to take some time. So that's why I say we have 2 months here. a month and a half, whatever you want to call it, to really do this. Optimally, we could be a couple games over 500. I just don't want to get my expectations too high when we do have some tough series in there, and especially like there's some teams with some talent in there too who are just like underperforming that we're playing
Yeah.
too. But
Yeah.
this is the like we talked about how important it was to survive in that first part of the schedule with all the NL West road trips and all the times we played them. Now it's time to start building up and getting
Yep.
back to 500. And that it's just as much as it was important to survive those days. It's just as important that we start making up these games and winning some series and getting closer to 500. Because if we're under 500 at the All-Star break, I'm not saying it's impossible to do anything, but that's when everyone else starts making trades to go get guys to help them out. And historically, we have not done that. So knowing that's the history of the Reds, that's why you got to be around 500. That's why it's so important. But it is very favorable and it's very possible they can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I will be honest, Joe and I have already talked about this, but they could go 20-10 over their next 30 games, and that would not completely surprise me, and that would put them at 3 games over and likely already in a wild card spot. So I'm more hoping even something like 18-13 wouldn't be bad. 18-13 gets them to 2 games under, and they're in a really, really good spot over that time period, and that would not even include the games that they still have to play in that huge 10-game homestand before the All-Star break. So, or it might be 11 games, something like that, 10 or 11 games. So, pretty big stuff there, pretty big stuff. So we're going to look ahead. We've been generally trying to stay away from the injury news. I think Joe and I's mindset was just survive. Let's just survive. Let's talk about how we're going to survive. Now we do not have to worry about the survival. We have survived barely. Very much barely, to be very clear. The heartbeat is there. We don't know how strong it is at the moment. We're going to have to really see over these next 6 games. Critical. 4-2 would be huge over these next 6 games. I'll throw that out there. But injury updates. Candelario didn't play on Sunday because of a sore neck. He's been hitting the crap out of the ball for the last 3 weeks, basically. Hopefully this will be very quick for him, maybe even just a little bit of a mental rest, and then he comes back in and starts hitting again. You never know with neck injuries. Like they can go away one day. It just could be from sleeping bad one night, waking up. We lost India for 2 games because of a migraine. This kind of feels like something like that. Just we'll hope it doesn't linger. Christian Encarnacion-Strand started taking ground balls again, even with the broken hand. So we could be seeing him back in the lineup here relatively soon. TJ Friedel is looking to be on track for 2 weeks from now, is what I was seeing. June 10th, that would be about 4 weeks. They said he's not going to do a rehab start, most likely. They said he'd just go straight back into the lineup. So looks potentially likely we could see him June 10th, somewhere around that same week. Emilio Pagan back sometime in the next 2 weeks as well, recently going on with another injury. Nick Lodolo is back today. They survived his 2 starts without him. Nick Martinez was not great in the one, but that's okay. The bullpen day worked out well for them. Big news in terms of starting pitching is that Brandon Williamson has started pitching again in AAA. That will, I think, make the Reds' decision a lot easier. Nick Martinez has kind of been filling in that role that Brandon Williamson would have, where he'll be in AAA until the Reds need a starter because somebody goes down, and then Williamson will come up. That being said, if Sam Moll continues to struggle, if Justin Wilson really struggles and they want to open up some spots in the bullpen, there's a world where Brandon Williamson comes back. He's a lefty in the bullpen, and he's the long reliever guy as well. So you can take out Carson Spires from that role, even though he's been solid, I would say, for the most part. But that Brandon Williamson injury is one that I'm going to be personally watching for, Joe. I think that that's a very, very, very important and very important one for us because he was pretty solid last year.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing with these is I think you're right. Like candy with the neck, you just don't know how long it's going to linger. We keep on getting hit in the hands by pitches, which David Bell's reacting pretty appropriately by going nuts. Which a lot of time, like I don't think anyone's purposely throwing at Reds hitters. I do think they're trying to get them off the plate. But like, how many times can your guys get hit and everything? So it's been good to see that. Friedel seems like you're right. June 10th is on track. CES, Nick Kroll said on 700, and I think it's via tweet via my friend Charlie Clifford, who works at Channel 5 in Cincinnati. It's a month or so away from returning for CES, even though he's taking ground balls. So that's tough. And then the whole McLean thing is very, very up in the air. It seems like it's maybe in August, maybe not at all still this whole year. So that's what really you have to think about is just like before we getting these guys back, it might be in waves of like, hey, Friedel first, and then CES and Marte at the end of June, it sounds like, and then
Hmm.
McLean maybe later on. Those are the things. Those are the guys we obviously need the most. Even when CES was struggling, it was obviously way better than what we put out there in terms of left hand or
Yes.
excuse me, with first baseman and power bats in the lineup. So I would like to have him in the lineup instead of Mike Ford or even Nick Martini, even though they play different positions. I'd like to have more bats in the lineup. So that's the weird stuff with this is like every day it seems like we get a new update about timetables changing and everything too. So I'm very interested to see how they handle this with a lot of guys. Do they bring Matt McLean? Do they rush him back if we're making a playoff push to make sure he's on the playoff roster and make sure he's good to go?
Hmm.
Do we save his future health for the for next year? Are we in contention at that point? I think there's a lot of questions that'll have to be answered, but it is good to know like we're definitely getting Noelle Marte back on June 27th.
Yep.
It seems like we'll be getting CES back in a month, and at least we'll be getting Friedel back in the next 2 weeks from now. It seems like so. At least there's those things going on where we kind of know more of a timeline.
Yeah, and I think that it's important. I'm going to bring this up really quickly. I mean, you look at our lineup from specifically yesterday, right? Give me 2 seconds so I can find this. Where? There we go. Box score. Okay. You have Hurtubise. That's going to get replaced by Friedel. De La Cruz, Steer, Fraley, I think has kind of won the job in right field to me over Benson. I think Benson goes to being that fourth outfielder, which is fine. I don't think that's a bad thing. Even Marte coming back, if India continues to struggle, I know he's the heart and soul, they like to say, of this team, but like, dude, put Noel Marte at second base. Sorry, I know he can play it, but I think Marte right now is probably going to be a better bat than India, or at least switch him off. DH wise, then you can put, I think, India there. Espinal, great backup. I've really started to like Espinal lately. I think his swing has gotten better, and I think he's generally, I know he had the big error, I think it was on Sunday, but he's looked a lot better in my opinion. Now that it seems like he's comfortable. You got Ty Stevenson who will be at catcher, and then that extra outfielder spot. That's what's gonna suck is I think between Hurtubise and Fairchild, what do you do there? Do you just send Martini and Ford down and keep Hurtubise even though you'd like to have a power bat off the bench, right? Like there are gonna be decisions that have to be made, but just think about like with Marte, CES, and Friedel back, our lineup looks immensely better, like so much different. And yeah, they may struggle. Like if they're hitting 220, whatever, that's still better than what we're having. And we've talked about this, like a couple more hits and this Reds team is in a much different position. Think about it this way too, friends. Ellie De La Cruz and Spencer Steer finally get some protection other than just each other. Like those are massive, massive things that can help this lineup like a lot. And then even if you get McLean back, which to give people an update on that as well, I know you said we're hoping in August. He did start throwing and running a couple weeks ago. Throwing is the biggest thing. Just to be clear, when you have a labrum injury, it's how does the arm feel? Once you start throwing, you're on a better pace. Now, throwing could be light tossing, just general motion stuff. They may even just DH him once he comes back, to be honest with you, because he won't have as much power. His swing will probably be a little slower, but generally speaking, it should be okay to at least hit. I forget who it was. Somebody tore their labrum late last season or the season before. It was a big name whose name I cannot currently remember. But they were able to hit the entire time. They just couldn't field, right? So even if they can get Matt McLean back, like let's say in July, because they realize, hey, like he can hit, we just can't have him field until August because he'll still be off that 60-day DL by that point. That could be a very realistic possibility if they feel like they just need another bat and they don't mind him just being kind of a lame duck and just being your DH, which I think all of us would be fine with that, to be honest with you. So there's a lot of potential here for this lineup now to, I think, really survive. I think, again, I cannot overemphasize this. Brandon Williamson coming back is huge for this team. I thought for a little while because of the Lodolo injury that maybe Williamson would be the better TCU boy, just because I do think he has a lot more potential and than we thought, not more than Lodolo overall, but more than we thought, right? So I'm really like him being our sixth starter. And I mean, hell, even if Montas or Ashcraft start to really struggle, having a starting rotation with three very different type of lefties in it is quite a luxury to have, to say the least. And we haven't even talked about one other person who's not an injury, but somebody who could come up and help the team, Rhett Lauder. He's been pitching well again. If Skeens was able to make it up as quickly as he could, and Lauder was the guy drafted right behind him, I don't really see why. The Reds, I think, are taking their time because they have the ability to, but I fully expect at this point that Rhett Lauder will be in the rotation to start next season. So, to be completely honest with you. But there are reserves. We'll be getting them back here hopefully very soon. And like Joe said, maybe they will make a move at the deadline. I wouldn't hate if they got another outfielder, to be honest with you. I love Will Benson. But, like, dude, if Fraley ends up being that guy that Benson is right now because we go out and get another bat, so be it. Dude, I'm telling you, go get freaking Luis Roberts or something. I really mean that still.
So I do think, to kind of address a couple things you said, I do think Hurtubise, there might be a path for him and Fairchild to still have a role down the line because I'm just assuming at this point someone else will get injured, or maybe we'll trade Benson or something. We just feel like he's not producing, and I don't know, just try to open up spots for other people. But you're right, Benson's been a huge issue this year. Most strikeouts in the league. That just can't happen, especially with batting average so low. And then I think you're being a little bit generous with Matt McClain's timetable. I mean, I've only seen September still, and I don't think even. I don't want to get hyped up over him possibly coming back in July or even August because I still think it's going to be September at the minimum.
Sure.
So it'd be nice if he comes back sooner, and I'd love for him to play, but I don't think it's going to happen. So
I don't either. I'm just saying there's a path, that there is a possibility because I know a decent amount about that injury specifically because I've had it myself. Now it was 10 years ago, so probably closer to 15, honestly, at this point. But the point remains that there is a world where it could happen. Is it likely? No. But if the Reds decided and they see that he's feeling fine hitting-wise, it's very unlikely for him to re-injure something while hitting, especially considering it's his back arm instead of his front arm. So there is that to take into consideration. But the injury updates are relatively good. The big two for me truly are Williamson and Marte. Again, as Joe alluded to, Marte should be back on the 27th or the 28th, somewhere in that Cardinals series at the end of the month. So we only have about exactly 4 weeks left until he'll be. Now, as a reminder as well, he will not be available to play in the playoffs. I think that's the bigger problem with this. So he'll be able to help us get there potentially, but then we're going to have to figure out what to do with him when he's not able to be there. So that will be a problem, but I don't know. Maybe the Reds can appeal and try to see if they can get that part of it overturned.
This is the interesting thing where if they are making a push with him in the lineup and it's like the end of July, they might make a push for a rental at like third base or where, like, honestly, and it makes sense because like if the guy's helping you win, but you're going to be pulled from the lineup, you need someone to take a spot. We can't keep on doing what we've been doing, which is like try to find guys from AAA who sometimes work out for a week and sometimes don't, and then we have to figure it all out again. So I think I would watch out if the Reds are in contention to find that rental on the cheap for 1 year to take over Marte's spot in the lineup if he does establish himself and if we are doing better at that point.
And I think he will. And to be clear, I think he'll learn from this, and I think the Reds are going to be really happy to have him next year, to be honest. I think Marte truly does, not just because of his swing, but the way he plays really does remind me of like a Manny Machado Jr. or Manny Machado Light. Like they have a very similar swing path, a very similar stance even. They play the same types of positions. Like if he could work out to be anything close to that, I mean, people got to remember he was the number one Reds prospect once everybody graduated this year for a reason. He's very good. So, and that's including over Rhett Lauder, who I think could be an absolute ace stud type guy. So, and let's also not forget the last thing I'll say. It's not going to matter this year, most likely. I don't know if that's ever happened before, but we will be drafting at number 2 here in just a couple of weeks. And there are some pretty good bats at the top of that lineup. So,
oh yeah, so definitely. I mean, NCAA baseball tournament starting up this weekend, so definitely check that out. There's plenty of guys on there that the Reds will be targeting that are like top of the lineup. There's a guy from Florida who plays first base and pitches, which is kind of cool with the two-way thing. There's a guy from Oregon State who's a pretty good bat too. So just keep an eye out. I'll be watching these games in between watching Reds games and everything. A lot of fun watching those guys and seeing who we might get because that's how Rhett Lauder. I watched him in the ACC tournament last year. I watched him in the NCAA tournament. That's how you start learning about these guys, and I was pumped about him because I saw him in college already. So it was kind of fun.
He's a beast, man. I'm so excited for Rhett Lauder. All right, we continue on. Last topic before we get into the games here, Joe, starting pitching. I want to read these off real quickly to you. I think that these are our guys right now. Like, I'm just going to cement this. I think these are our top three guys. You know how much I love Graham Ashcraft. He is very inconsistent, I will say, but I still think he's, if he still ends up being our fifth starter for the future, I still think he's very good, to be completely clear. That being said, Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, and Nick Lodolo are absolute studs. There's just no other way to put it. Hunter Green, 3-2, 3.06 ERA, 71 strikeouts, which is, I believe, as of yesterday, was good for top 10 in baseball. I'd love for you to check that again for me, but according to ESPN yesterday when I was checking, he was, I believe, 8th or something like that with 71 strikeouts. So pretty awesome to see. 1.14 whip, which is amazing. A 214 batting average against. He's only given up 4 home runs this year. The guy really gives up not very hard contact most of the time. He's averaging almost 6.5 strikeouts per game, which is at about 1.1 an inning. So you generally want 1 an inning. Anything above that is good. Andrew Abbott, 3-4, whatever. Like, he's been screwed all year in terms of wins and losses, but a 2.68 ERA, 43 strikeouts. He's not a big strikeout guy, I'm kind of realizing, but he's a soft contact guy. 1.09 whip, a 221 average, and he's literally only giving up solo home runs. That can be problematic. His ERA should probably be a little bit higher, but if he can really get that down, dude, that kid may be very, very special. And then you got lastly Nick Lodolo, 3-2, 3.34 ERA. He's got 43 strikeouts in only 6 games. He's got a less than 1 whip, 0.94, and a 189 average against. He's averaging 7.2 strikeouts per game at a 1.23 per inning. These guys are just getting it together. Hunter Green looks unbelievable, Joe. I mean, truly. Hunter Green looks confident. I think that adding those 2 other pitches, the splitter and the curveball, while he doesn't use the curve very much, and the splitters, I think this is the year of the splitter. Honestly, it feels like everybody has one nowadays, but I think it's just more of a better sinker for a lot of people, to be honest with you. But Joe, it's wild to me. It's been wild to me to see his development, because I thought that we would see this maybe next year, because I was like, man, it's going to take him some time to really figure out the splitter and curveball. Like, he was kind of, not doing badly, but he's just been more pitch efficient over the last month, and he's been dialed in. We said all year, we need the Reds to go more innings, right? We need these pitchers to be going more than barely 5 innings. Pretty much all of them are. Hunter Green's almost at 6 innings per game right now. Andrew Abbott's almost at 6. Even Graham Ashcraft is at 5.5 right now. Lodolo is closer to 7. Or no, he's right at 6 as well. We're getting an extra inning out of our guys, and it is saving our bullpen so much this year. It's impressive. I mean, it really is. They have been just so much better, and it's been really, really, really encouraging to see.
Yeah, he's tied for 10th in strikeouts major leagues
Okay.
right now, as of this morning, which is very, very good. I know I talked about what John Smoltz was saying. I was very impressed with what they said about the splitter. The splitter, it just drops off the table on especially left-handed hitters. He doesn't really, have that pitch that does break to the right a little bit. Like sinkers will break to the right and away from left-handed hitters. Yeah. 2-seamers, he doesn't really have that. Anything else? They did talk about MLB average for a 4-seam fastball for a pitcher is 30% of the time they throw that. And he's throwing it at 60%. So I'm hoping he continues to get more and more comfortable with his other pitches so that he doesn't just sit dead red on his fastball. And that's how we've seen guys being able to make contact with it, because they're like, hey, 60% of the time it's going to be really, really fast, but I can just guess. And the 60% is not a bad percentage for an MLB hitter to say this is coming. So I hope he continues to develop. But the fact that he's doing this without even these pitches fully being developed and possibly adding some more, maybe one of those pitches that does break away from left-handers, could be huge. I mentioned in our preseason show, Rob, I thought he'd be in the Cy Young talks. I did not think it was going to be so soon. I thought it'd be slowly building up. He's not quite there yet, because there are guys who are doing a little bit better than him, and we are a smaller market. We know how that works. Ranger Suarez right now, 1.75 ERA for the Phillies. Yeah. What are you going to do with that? Tyler Glass now, 3.09 for the Dodgers. He's playing on the Dodgers. There's guys who I think just have more notoriety so like sooner. But I think if he continues at this pace of continuing to get better and having these pitches come in throughout the season, he could be right there at the end of the year. I'm really excited with Dolo and Abbott too. I love again I mentioned this earlier, but I love how they're so different with how they do things. Like
Hmm.
Green is like the fastball guy, Abbott is like you said the soft contact, the placement, and Lodolo just has some nasty stuff that breaks. Now you're right. These three guys are locks for the next couple years now. I think they've all done in different time spans have done things that have made them locks. You're right. Graham Ashcraft. I don't know if he's gonna be on the team next year. I don't know what's gonna happen there, but I think mostly it comes from the fact of his inconsistency. 4.67 ERA. As soon as he gets it back down towards 4.0, I think he was at 4.19 like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
all the way back up to 4.67. Don't know if you really want that. I think next year there might be more of a competition of, hey, Brandon Williamson, here's your shot. Hey, Rhett Lauder, here's your shot. Hey, we might sign one veteran for the pitching staff if Montas is gone, or if Montas comes back, maybe he's that guy to eat innings or to be a fourth or fifth starter in the rotation because these guys are the stars on the top of the rotation. They asked Hunter Green to go prove that he was the guy by giving Frankie Montas the ball on day one, opening day. He's done nothing but prove that right now. I mean, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself here because he's like starting to reach his potential. And I don't want to jinx anything, and I also know that these guys, all the young guys, besides maybe the even Abbott at the end of last year, have had their ups and their downs. Where it's like as soon as they feel like you're figuring it out, they come back down to earth. But from everything we've seen this year, the dude has matured in a big way, and I think he's going to get those pitch counts down that everyone complains about in the next couple of years here. Because once he gets that fastball percentage down to maybe even 50 or 40% thrown, people won't be able to foul him off. He'll be able to locate his other pitches better.
Hmm.
I am really happy with his development. We have a star on our hands here. You know, everyone will talk about maybe Ellie being the guy who's like the most potential on the team, but let's not forget Hunter Green, drafted very, very highly. We've been waiting on him for a while. He's done nothing but good things. You know, had some seasons where there's maybe mixed results, but I'm super excited to see what he can do and this pitching staff as a whole the next couple of years. But you're right; these three guys are definitely locked in. I think for the foreseeable future. Just hoping they don't get injured. You know, like Lodolo has been in the past.
Yeah, and well, let's not forget too as well. Um, Lodolo's the oldest one, and he just turned 26. Hunter Green is
Mm-hmm.
in his 25 season. Andrew Abbott will actually 2 days before me will be turning 25, and only a few days before you as well. I guess a little hint there. Funny enough, but like these, if you have a core of three guys under the ages of 27, we'll say, who are like this, dude, you are set. You're set. The Reds should be working on contracts for Abbott and Lodolo like right now. I know Lodolo has been hurt. That's fine. I'm not saying you give it to him. I'm saying you have it in place and you say, get through this year. If you can get through the rest of this year without being injured outside of like a weird groin thing or whatever, that happens occasionally, or like shoulder soreness that's only like a week or whatever, like one start, whatever, that's fine. But like, at least for Abbott, I would be offering him a contract now because he doesn't seem like that kind of a guy that's going to have to worry about those types of injuries because he really does sit like
Mm-hmm.
94, which is fine. I'd like to see him add like 1 more mile an hour to his fastball. It sounds really picky. It is nitpicky, but I think one more would give him a little bit more strikeout potential, which I think would be very good for him. But I think there's a real opportunity for the Reds to potentially have one of the best young rotations in baseball very, very soon. I do think the addition of Rhett Lauder could make that happen, and then you just figure out who the hell is going to be your fifth starter, and I just don't know that it matters after that point. Um,
Yeah. Well, what's your point, Rob? We locked up Hunter Green on a deal
mhm.
that is so advantageous for us. Six
Yep.
years, 53 million. I'm trying to find the tweet to give credit, but also to remember the stat. I believe he's the 104th highest paid. It's either starting pitcher or pitcher overall, and we have him for the next 6 years, right? 6.5 years, whatever it is. We signed him. We signed him to a contract extension last year, so it's 6 years from this year. So just incredible that we did that. I mentioned that the Braves have to be the team we model ourselves after, and that is locking up these young guys for a long time, especially the ones who have proven themselves over and over again. So like, yeah, like. Is it going to be tough for some of these pitchers who have had ups and downs to do it? But like, just go do it. And I think, yeah, you'll have some bad investments, but you also have some good ones where we have Hunter Green on a deal. So it's going to be tough with all the young guys. There's a lot of them. The Reds aren't a big market team. We're dealing with a lot of players represented by Scott Boras as well, with Ellie and Matt McLean both. But that has to be the focus here is Hunter Green was locked up. That's cool. Who's the next one? Who's the next? Let's keep on moving on and start locking some of these guys up for the long term for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, look, the Reds have a potential club option, not even player option, in 2029 for only $21 million. If he's pitching like this, they will do that. So, 2030 would be the first time that he'd be even able to go and try to find another contract. And if he's pitching like he is, and he seems like he's a guy who's very loyal based on the way he talks and what he wants to do for Cincinnati, I would not be surprised if the Reds just hand him let's just finish out your career type of contract. They did it with Joey Votto. When they do feel like they have a star in their hands, they will make that kind of move. They did it with Ken Griffey Jr. too. So it's been different ownership, but they will, I think, do it when they need to. And if not, then yeah, it's time to really bring out the forks, or the pitchforks, and the fire, I guess I'll call it, the torches. There you go. But the Reds are looking to be in a great spot pitching wise. And let's be honest with you, guys, pitching is more important than bats. You can find bats. Finding really consistent young starting pitching is the premium. That's what every single team wants. There are tons of great lineups that do not make it in through the playoffs because their pitching is not good enough. That's just how it is. If you can hold a team to 1, 2, 3 runs every single game, you have a chance to win, period. We are literally watching the Reds do that right now with a lineup of just absolute bugaboos. All right? Just terrible people. They're all bad. So, not all, but a lot of them are not great.
Right. The funny thing is, and I can be a little bit mercurial where like one week I'm down on the Reds, one week I'm high, but the one thing I've been consistent about is the starting pitching this year. And what I'm afraid of to say is like a lot of the teams that we remember in baseball, even if they didn't win at all, are teams that had 3 really good pitchers at the same time. So like the 90s Braves, 90s Braves with Maddox, Glavine, Smoltz, who we've been talking about a little bit. Those A's team, Moneyball, I remember Moneyball always gets criticized because they talk about just the hitters, but they had all those pitchers. Yeah, they had 3 good pitchers. And Tim Hudson as well was the third one there.
The other one. Even the Giants with the Lincecum, Matt Cain, I forget who else era.
Bumgarner.
That's right. Mad Bum. Dude.
I mean, and they won 3 titles every even year for the start of the 2010. So
yeah,
it does get your hopes up. Those teams also had good hitters too. We're have to find out who those good hitters are for us because the averages are too far down right now for a league that did change the rules to make it so you couldn't shift. And averages were up last year for a while. I'll have to do my research on how averages are affected this year by the lack of the shift. But that's something we should hopefully improve here. And you're right, we can definitely go acquire a bat more easily than we can acquire arms. At least starting pitchers. Bullpen guys are sometimes cheap too, which we do need. But that's going to be the good news is we might have these 3 pitchers. And if you're in a playoff series, I mean, having these 3 guys to go against, and especially how different they are, that is tough to game plan for and tough to perform against. So I'm very happy.
Yeah, and let's be completely real here. The Reds have money still this year. They are 27th in total payroll allocations, only $105 million for this year. So if they need to go out and get some people at the trade deadline, I don't really care if freaking Nick Martinez or Emilio Pagan are signed for Emilio's signed for, I can't even find him. Maybe it's because he's on the injured list. Yeah. An $8 million, if they have to eat $8 million to find a better reliever than Emilio Pagan, fine. Don't care. Nick Martinez, same thing. If they just need to let him go at $14 million, fine. Frankie Montas even, dude. I don't care. Get rid of all of them. It doesn't matter. Go find somebody and go freaking win. If this team is going on a streak, go win. I don't care. You can eat these contracts for right now because you have at least the Reds have gotten up to, I think it was $175 million at one point, even with the Votto contract being at $25 million. So if you're telling me that they can't go out and get literally almost anybody right now in baseball at the trade deadline because of, I don't know if they're going to be willing to eat so-and-so's contract to be able to make that happen. No, they will do that. It's just going to happen.
You keep on bringing up Emilio Pagan. I don't think he's the first guy out of that bullpen when they sign someone else.
No, I was just talking about major contracts. I was specifically talking about the major contracts.
But the point is well taken because any contract should not prevent the Reds from doing more, getting more bullpen pieces. We
Correct.
have the closer with a 5.75 ERA. That is garbage. That is awful. Lucas Sims has been really bad this year. So
Hmm.
I know Pagan's the guy you pick out to pick on a little bit, but those guys are more important and they're also playing worse. So we like if you go
Lucas
like
Sims
it's
has
not
been
out of the realm.
amazing for the last like 12 starts or 12 games, apparently. His ERA has apparently been like a 1-2 for the last 12 games. He just had that one game where he really blew up. But yes,
He's
your point is still well taken.
he's got he's got 20 games. He's got enough appearances where the ERA isn't inflated. That is who he is. He can keep on bringing it down, but he's played 20 games now. He's got to do better. If we there's a chance we go trade for a closer and a setup guy because to be honest, we don't have that. And Fernando Cruz has come back down to earth a little bit. His splitter is still incredible too. I'm not saying that any one of these guys gets replaced, but like if the worst bullpen pitcher that you have gets replaced, or if they go get a closer and people's roles change and they want to get upset about it, I don't care. Like, no, if you're not performing, we have to like take this seriously and try to compete because, I feel like we've fans maybe not like let the Reds off the hook a little bit, but like
They haven't held him
it's so
accountable.
it's so right. It's so rare you get these three starting pitchers you have. And again, if you were able to get some guys in the bullpen to help us out, like we could talk about the hitting, but like again, if your closer has a 5.75 ERA, if you get a lead, it may not even matter. So that's just a lot of things that can improve. And you're right, they do have the money to do it. So let's hold their feet to the fire. Let's see some contract extensions or some trades to help us out this year. Let's see both of them optimally. But we just know I'm not trying to wish for too much at once. I just want to see at least one or the other, at least to start, if we actually start winning some games here. If we don't, then yes, you can start shipping guys off and then getting contract extensions for the younger guys now here too.
Buck Farmer for closer. Just kidding.
2.19 ERA. Let's do it.
Hey man, I don't give a shit about the ERAs. I think for relievers especially, I think it's not super telling. I think WHIP and batting average against are what I look at the most of the time. So
Nope, absolutely is telling. It is the all-encompassing stat for pitchers. I don't care if you have a bad day, especially like Lucas Sims, 20
he's
appearances.
got a
Have good days
3.75
after that. Bring
ERA
it.
over his last 15 games. He's doing okay. He's not great, but he's
That's
doing okay.
that's yeah, it's not great. It's fine, but like I think is all encompassing. I do think that it breaks into account who you're responsible for when you let someone on base or you're not. I'm a big ERA fan. It gives the great barometer of what you're doing, I think. But that's just me. We can differ on that, and you can be wrong, Rob.
Oh boy. I'm looking something up right now because we're not letting that be the end of that conversation. Give me just a second here.
I don't know. I don't think you're gonna be able to convince me that ERA is not a stat to
The
be
Reds
held in the
the
highest
Reds
esteem.
relieving ERA right now is a 3.81 overall and is 13th in baseball.
Good, pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah, and it
It's
can't just be Buck Farmer that's carrying that. So
no. I mean,
and he's
it
not even being
definitely
used in
isn't.
high leverage situations either. They're using him to mop
I mean,
up innings and stuff. My point is that
you're
ERA is not exactly it's all encompassing to a certain degree. But I don't think like if we like I just think how do I put this? I think for relievers especially who gave up like they left in I think Sims to give up like 5 runs one game and that was on literally one inning with a .1 innings pitch or something like that. That absolutely balloons your ERA. And that happens to everybody unless if you're like the elite of the elite in terms of closers. I'm not saying that Lucas Sims is good, to be clear. Like he's been pretty average. But I'm just saying specifically like I think ERAs for relievers I think are overstated at times is what I will say. I'm not saying they're not important. I'm just saying there are a lot of other factors when I'm looking at who's a good reliever, right? Like Sam Mole, you have been saying is a very good reliever. His ERA ballooned because he gave up 2 runs on a third of an inning pitched, and now his ERA is close to Lucas Sims, right? So what I'm saying is, yes, it is. He's got a 4.25 ERA right now. Lucas Sims has like a 4.6 or a 4.8. So that's very
he has a 3.
close.
He has a 3.38
I just saw it
according
yesterday.
to ESPN. 3.38. So again, it ballooned, but how much did it balloon? That's why it is all encompassing because it does. If you have a bad start, you can come back and find yourself. If Sam Law started off the season well and had a bad thing, he's good. Maybe ESPN's wrong, but
No,
really
you're right.
does
I
tell.
saw something yesterday. Like his last 7 games, he has a 5.4 ERA.
Right, Rob, I love you. You like to see the positives and all these things, and that's why you're looking at batting average against and walks and hits per innings pitched because that's where we can find some favoritism here for our team. But let's hold him accountable. Alexis Diaz has been awful.
I wasn't
5.75 ERA is not
defending.
good enough.
I wasn't defending him,
Lucas
but yeah.
Sims, Lucas Sims, 4.4. It's okay if he has a 3.75 the last couple weeks. That's good. That's perfect. 13th ERA bullpen. I think last week, 2 weeks ago at this point, or when we did a podcast last week, it was we were I think ranked 20th, tied for 20th with bullpen ERA. So we've come down a little bit, and that's awesome. But I do think, hey, if your manager leaves you in there and you give up a home run and they don't take you out, a lot of times it's not because of stamina. Maybe you don't have your stuff. It is on you to figure out how to get the guys out. I'm sorry, but I always
I'm
use it
just
as a
looking at it
barometer. I
right
don't.
now. He had two back-to-back games where he gave up in one full inning pitched 5 runs. Other than that, it's been almost all zeros for the rest of the year.
That's
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 what I'm
good.
saying. Is it's like that at the beginning of the year, he gave up 5, 6, 7 runs in his first 5 games pitched. Since then, he has given up 2. He has given up 1 run in the entire month of May. What I'm trying to say is that ERA for relievers, that is, I think, a very distinct case right now, is not completely all encompassing when you look at that kind of stuff. If somebody goes through a very small stretch where they're not good, right? It's not like a batting average where you go like a week and your batting average is horrible or really bad. Like there's still time to figure that one out. I'm just telling you, if you literally take away the first 5 games of the year, he's got like a 0 ERA basically. He will have given up 2 runs on solo home runs for the last, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
So it's
6,
yeah.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 games. So
Mhm.
what I'm saying is that in general, to a certain degree, you are correct. But for relievers, if you're going to try to tell me that an ERA, when you're getting zero point 0.1 innings pitched because you gave up a 3-run home run, is not something that gets absolutely overinflated and could be in a game that doesn't even matter, I just don't. I don't value that. I value it, but it's not my number one thing. I'm looking at what is his. How many people is he walking per game? How many people is he striking out? What is his batting average against? What are these other statistics? And I think for reliever, that's important. I mean, he had a 10 ERA on April 18th, and he has a 4.41 ERA right now. So if you just take it
He's
in
done a
a
good job to bring it
vacuum,
down. Yeah.
if you put it into a vacuum, sure, that ERA is bad. If you take it because you've been watching games, which I know you have, so this is not you, I'm talking about the broader people for the entire year, then he's actually been very good. His ERA, like, dude, that's what I'm saying. Like, ERAs are so fickle. He had a 2.25 ERA on April 8th, and on April 17th, 2 games later, he has a 10.8 because he's literally only pitching 1 inning.
Right, but okay, but like starting pitchers do like this is a way to equalize starting pitchers to relief pitchers. Their jobs like your job as relief pitcher is especially because you inherit runners, but like you're not responsible for them all the time, right? That you can go throw your hardest. Starters have to go in and like save themselves. They have to try to get guys out. You're coming in for an inning. If you go up a run in an inning, it freaking matters because if a starter gave up a run in an inning, they'd be awful. So come in and do your job. I don't think it's overinflated whatsoever. It's good that he's brought it down, but when you pitch so poorly to start the season, you're going to have to do a ton of work to dig yourself out of it. And I like that aspect of it because we sit here and talk about, the walks and hits and everything, and that's fine. But even watching the games outside of May, even in April, even the end of April, there have been times where you're watching them and you're like, oh boy, I don't know about this one. It's just been bad. So, yeah, like if you have a 6.75 ERA at the end of April, yeah, it should take a whole month to get it back down to a respectable level. I'm not kidding. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So we can disagree all you want, but this is the best way to hold pitchers accountable. And it's cool that like sometimes you can say like, hey, he's pitching better than his ERA right now, but his ERA will come down as a reflection of that too. So if Lucas Sims does his job, yeah, by the middle of June, his ERA will be 3.8, and we'll be saying, yeah, this is great. He's
It'll
doing
probably be
great,
like
and
a
he'll keep on
2
moving it
with the
down.
way he's been pitching right now. But yeah,
I don't know if I expect that, but yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm still very big on ERA. I think it holds them accountable in a way that, like, yeah, if you give up one hit as a reliever, it means more than if you give up one hit as a starter because starters are going longer, and that means, especially when you are a setup guy, it means a lot. So I'm all in on ERA. I know that I'm different than a lot of people. I think it is cool how if you have a bad start or a bad outing, you have to come back and you have to dig yourself out of that. Or if you have a good outing, you have a couple good outings, and then you have one bad one like Sam Ball. It's a 3.3 or 8 ERA. It's still respectable, but
Oh,
over
he's
the
been
course of the
great
season,
still.
when you're trying to
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
3.38 is a great ERA. So I think that's what I like about it is it does gauge up and down throughout the season, and it's not just something we're sitting there like, okay, well he's a 10 ERA pitcher. He was at one point, but it's going to move down because he's going to pitch better. So I
I just think that
I'm
there's
not going to
too
be
much nuance because I think like your point for Alexis Diaz to be clear, right? Like this month, Alexis Diaz has in 10 games, so 3 games he has given up at least a run, right? Actually 4 because one of them was still it was an unearned run. That's bad to me. So if in 4 out of those 10 games he's giving up a run, that to me is bad. But his ERA is kind of close to, or I guess sort of close in terms of reliever status to Lucas Sims, right? Yes, it is.
5.7, 5.75 and 4.4 are a long way away, buddy.
In terms of,
That is a lo-
okay, fine,
that's more than
whatever.
that's more than a run.
Okay, fine. All I'm saying is I think reliever ERAs are looked at in a very different way. And I don't agree with you because I think in terms of I think there are very different types of the ways that they've gotten it. I think if to me, if a guy is amazing 9 times out of 10 and that 10th time he gives up 4 runs in that one game, sure, yeah, he cost us that game, but hey, if he helped us win those other 9 games, that is what it is, right? Whereas if somebody's consistently giving up 1 run, but their ERA is close or similar or whatever to somebody else's who maybe has that same inflated ERA because of how many runs they gave up, then that to me is very different because then they're maybe losing 4 games that in that same time span because they're giving up the 1 run in the most crucial situations. And like, I don't know. I just think it's very different. Clearly, you're looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm not even giving you bad looks, but it's fine. We can move on.
I
I
mean,
just see it very differently.
I
Hey,
just
it's okay. It's okay. We're gonna disagree. That's fine. I think we've spent enough time on it. If you want to get your last thing in here, and we could move on.
I just think it's the best way to hold people accountable, and it's cool to have it go up and down during the season based on how you're playing. And if you over a long period of time, it will become somewhat stabilized. So again, we talked about after about a month of baseball, a lot of these stats become real. For bullpen ERA, if you want to say it's 2 months, that's fine. But I think to say Lucas Sims is a 4.4 ERA pitcher this year, I think is fine because it reflects that he had early season struggles, but he also has pitched pretty well in the last month. But that's also has been, not as long as the struggles have been. So I think it's pretty accurate. So that's what I'm going to go with.
Okay, we'll move on. We've got to get on here to the Cardinals and to the Cubs. We got the Cardinals for 3 games at home. Right now, we have Lodolo versus Lance Lynn, Abbott versus Kyle Gibson, Frankie Montas versus Matthew Liberatore. We're not 100% sure on the Matthew Liberatore game, to be honest with you guys. It's kind of up in the air. They had a rainout game on Friday, so things got a little bit more confusing. Their closer, Ryan Helsley, has been very good this year. 17 saves out of 18 tries, which is extremely good. They have had some of the most opportunities, I believe, for saves. I need to check that to be very certain. They're second most in terms of save opportunities. He's been very good. So if the Reds get down in the game and he's coming in, that's going to make things very difficult. Lineup right now: Brandon Donovan, Lars Nootbaar, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Matt Carpenter, Nolan Gorman, Ivan Herrera, Mason Wynn, their young guy, old friend Mike Ciani, although he never really saw much time with the Reds. And then you have Alec Burleson, Pedro Pajes, I believe, similarly to what we saw this past weekend, Brandon Crawford, and Dylan Carlson. My only notes on this team, dude, I don't really know what to make of them because they have some people who are just playing very, very well, and then the majority of their roster has not been very good. They only have 43 home runs this year, which is tied for second last and just ahead of the White Sox. Their OPS is pretty similar to ours, even though they have some really big names on this team. Their bottom 10 pitching staff in terms of ERA, and basically it's just been their back end of their bullpen that I think has kind of carried them between Helsley, John King, and JoJo Romero, and Sonny Gray, who were getting to Dodge. this team feels very beatable, Joe. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I know that they've also, you were telling me they've played a pretty decent schedule so far. I don't know if I said it, but they are 25-26, just a game under 500. They were really bad to start the season. They've definitely started to pick it up, but where are you at with this Cardinals team?
They are probably overperforming from a team standpoint, especially given they've had a decent schedule. Not as tough as the Reds, mind you, but there are players on their team that I think are underperforming, most notably Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado.
Mm-hmm.
263 for Nolan Arenado, 222 for Paul Goldschmidt. That makes them a pretty beatable team for me. We're getting them at the right time, too. Again, don't wish injuries on anyone, but Wilson Contreras is on the IL right now, so this is going to be, hey, can our pitchers keep the score down, and can we score 3 runs? So I really do think it'd be a low scoring series.
Yeah.
Mentioned we're getting them at the right time too. The Cubs, they played the Cubs this past weekend. Their last game on Sunday got pushed back a couple times because of rain. And then they finally completed the game last night. The Reds were able to hopefully rest after their series sweep of the Dodgers. Maybe they celebrated a little bit, but get ready to play in Cincinnati. The Cardinals had to come in and travel in. So there are, especially the way we're playing, there are a lot of things that are pointing in the direction of the Reds being able to at least win 2 of the series.
Is that your official prediction?
I'm going to go 2. Yeah, I got 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3.
Okay. I'm also going to go 2 out of 3, Joe. I think you're right. Look, if you can pitch around Goldschmidt and Arenado, which I believe Goldschmidt's also been striking out quite a bit. Let me make sure I get this right. One of the two of them have
668 for him.
Okay, so he's literally right behind Ellie and Will Benson. So he's been striking out a lot. Nolan Gorman has too. What's interesting is this team doesn't necessarily have a ton of strikeouts as a team. The rest of the team makes good contact. It's just 2 very important players for them. 2 people, kind of in the middle of their lineup, are just not hitting. 2 players. They're just not. They're hoping for, lightning in a bottle with Matt Carpenter. He's not been doing much. Brandon Crawford as well, they signed to do something. He is also not. They've started to rely now on their new young guy, Mason Wynn. I believe their top prospect. If not, then he's top 3 or 4 for them. Ivan Herrera, one of their new catchers. He's actually been playing pretty well, I think. Has been a solid backup for Wilson Contreras. But this team, especially with the amount of lefties that they have on it, makes me pretty happy about Abbott, honestly, and Lodolo being our starters for this series. I do think Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson are definitely beatable. Gibson's been a little bit better this year. Lynn, he is what he is. He's lost some miles per hour on his fastball, I will say, but he's still a pretty crafty guy up there. The Reds, if the Reds can get a lead and keep the lead through about the 7th, I think they have a decent shot. If they're giving up the lead anytime in the late innings and getting to that back end of the bullpen like we talked about, I think they could run into some issues. So I'm still going to go with a 2-1 as well. I think they're winning at least one of these games, to be honest with you. I just think Lodolo or Abbott are going to be able to handle a lot of these guys. I think it'll just be that middle of the order, and if the 2 of them can even just pitch around Goldschmidt and Arenado and just kind of pitch to everybody else, they might be in a really good position, to be honest with you. So I don't know if you have any later thoughts on that one, but I feel like that's a very winnable series at home. You're coming off with a ton of confidence against the Dodgers. If you can sweep the Dodgers, man, you can definitely win 2 of 3 against this Cardinals team, is my thought.
I agree. And hopefully they keep momentum going. The last thing I'll say is the best hitter they have going for them right now, who plays on a very consistent basis, is Mason Wynn, their shortstop. Mm-hmm. So if Arenado and Goldschmidt aren't killing us, which I feel like just happens against the Reds, the guys who slump on other teams who are stars end up killing us. That's the guy to watch out for. 301 average, 356 on base percentage right now. Mentioned the Cardinals have a history of having guys to be able to put the ball in play. He might be the next guy on that list that we end up hating in a couple of years.
Oh, it may be even this series. First time. As a reminder, this is the first time we're seeing both of these clubs that we're talking about for this year. Another one, we will go on the road to Chicago. Man, it's so nice to only have to fly an hour compared to flying 4 hours out to the West Coast, Joe. Whew, very good feeling. But right now we have it as Hunter Green versus Jameson Taillon. Yeah, always mess someone up. Graham Ashcraft versus Javier Assad. Nick Lodolo is his week for 2 games against Justin Steele. They've had a lot of bullpen issues. Joe has mentioned to me that almost their entire bullpen has been hurt at different points. Alzolay has been their normal closer. He's hurt. Hector Neris has been filling in and actually doing a pretty good job. 6 of 7 in his save opportunities. But then you have the lineup of Michael Topman, Seiya Suzuki, Cody Bellinger, Christopher Morel, Nico Horner's batting 5th a lot for some reason, Ian Happ, Dansby Swanson, Patrick Wisdom, and Yan Gomes with a bench looking like Nick Madrigal, Michael Bush, Miguel Amaya, and Luis Vasquez. This is another team that's played, I think, pretty well. Their starting pitching has been relatively solid. Tyone's been good. Assad's been good. And I can't remember his name. Imanga, is that right? Okay, I couldn't know if I didn't know if I was pronouncing it correctly. They've been very good. We are dodging their best starting pitcher this series, which is well, most likely at least, which is pretty nice for us. Justin Steele, who was in the Cy Young candidacy, I believe it was last year, if I remember correctly. He's actually not had a very good season so far. So this is another team I think we're catching at a good time. It'll depend. The weather's always an issue coming off the lake there in Chicago. So we'll have to see how much that plays into this team. Luckily, the wind does not affect speed. So hopefully we shouldn't really have to worry about that very much. But, this Cubs team is an interesting one, Joe. I will say that. I don't really know how I feel about them. They're not a super fast team, by the way, either. They do get caught quite a bit on the base paths. I really think pitching has been kind of their key so far this season. Their bullpen's not been great, like we said. So trying to get to the bullpen early in the series could be very, very helpful for this team, and could lead to some good stuff. Where are you at against this Cubs team, Joe?
Yeah, it's all about getting to the bullpen. 8 different players hurt right now. Some of them are more depth guys that maybe they wouldn't have on the roster, but are on the IL right now. Mm-hmm. But you also have to take into account they did have that late night series against the Cardinals last night. We'll see if this week if they have some guys who get used a lot and have to switch things up. That's always advantageous for the Reds when they're able to get to the bullpen. I'm with you. I think this team has outperformed expectations thus far. They've also had a decent schedule to this point of the season. There's not like a star in this lineup, although Correct. Ian Happ always kills the Reds, so watch for that. But there's guys who are hitting the ball. There's guys with like 260, 250, 240 averages, which is something the Reds fans would kill for right now. But there's a lot of those guys, so it's a much more balanced lineup than a lot of other teams. So they are getting by their pitching, but it's just when you have different guys, there's no star, there's no one hitting over 264, I think, at least who plays on a consistent basis who qualifies. That's going to be the tough part is like there's not just like one or two guys you can avoid or get those guys out and you feel more comfortable. It's like up and down the order, there are good players who are batting at the bottom of this lineup, even if they aren't showing so far this year, like Ian Happ, who's hitting 222, but will end up hitting 300 by the time he leaves here, and batting 5 for 5 every day and all that stuff. So
yeah, kind of like what we saw with oh my gosh, who was it in the Padres series? They just picked him up, David Peralta, who seemingly just always hits the Reds. But yeah, I mean, look, this Cubs team has a literally .01 batting average better than the Reds. That's literally just one decent series, one way or the other. Right, for them. So they're not hitting very well. Their starting pitching like ours has been pretty good. I will say they have more professional hitters in the sense of like they don't have a lot of young guys. They have a lot more veterancy with this lineup, between the Swansons, the Haps, the Suzukis, Bellinger, even Morel. I know he's still a younger guy, but he has a lot more at-bats than most of the Reds players right now. They did bring up Pete Crow Armstrong as well. I don't know if he's not been playing or if he's hurt or something like that. I feel like I may have missed that, but when I checked their depth chart, they didn't have him on it. So I don't know where he's at right now, if he's on the IL or something. But he's a young guy who's been coming up and been doing pretty decently for them. So he will probably see time too. I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out because I don't know. These MLB.com depth charts sometimes are very fickle, to say the least. So, yeah, I mean, look, this team can hit. They seemingly always can hit in Cincinnati, but we're in Chicago where I feel like if we had Joey Votto, I'd feel a lot better because he kills the Cubs in Chicago for some reason, but we don't, so we're going to have to figure out who the new Cubs killer could end up being because we've seemingly always had that at least, but I'm going to officially pick 2-1 in this series as well. I think if it's a pitcher versus pitcher matchup, I think that ours are a little bit better, to be honest with you. You have Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo going in this series. I think especially because they just, I know they have a bunch of righties. I think Hunter Green should be able to handle him in that game, and Taillon's probably the pitcher I fear the most in that group. I know Assad's been pretty solid, but of the three, he's the one who I, kind of am most concerned about. I think this is going to be another low-scoring series, to be honest with you, Joe, and that could be bad for the Reds, but law of averages would say that we'd finally start winning some of those one-run games, to be honest with you. So I'm going to kind of lean on that. I can't believe it, but I'm picking a 4-2 week for the Reds here, and them being only 5 games under 500 to start the month of June, which we both expect to be a much better month for them.
Yeah, because of the pitching matchups, I'm going to go 3-0 in this one. Reds win.
Whoa! Okay.
So Imanaga is not pitching in this series. He's been incredible for him. 0.84 ERA. They've had one other pitcher who qualifies for stats. It is Javier Assad, who's had a good season at 2.17 ERA. But I think the way we're pitching, we have Lodolo going in the last game against Justin Steele. Justin Steele's talented. He's just had a rough stretch a little bit. But we have Lodolo and Green, Ashcraft in the middle. That's the game that does concern me, is Ashcraft versus Assad.
Agreed.
I think our offenses might come to life a little bit. If we had a 4-2 week against the Padres and Dodgers, I think we could have a 5-1 week against the Cubs and the Cardinals. I think it's possible, especially with 3 being at home, 3 being on the road, and I don't know. I'm going to go 3-0. I'm going to change it up a little bit here, try to be more positive, and give us the win. But I know Cubs aren't playing, like, they aren't hitting the ball all that well, like we mentioned. But as soon as they play the Reds, they will start hitting the ball. So that could always happen. But I'm going to say 3-0. I think our pitchers are coming together. I think our hitting is getting better and better by day. I hope it's the case. I really do. I don't know. I think you're probably the more measured take this time with the 4-2 pick on the week. But I'll go 5-1. I'll go 5-1.
All right. Well, we'll have to see. I mean, that's huge because then they head to, just to preview next week, they will be heading to Colorado next week and then get 4 at home against the Cubs. So, like, if they can go 5-1 in this stretch, boy, oh boy, you better be hoping that the bats come alive in Colorado and we're feeling a lot better about things. So, if Joe's prediction comes right, there's a real world by June 10th that we are actually like only a game or 2 under 500. So just going to throw that out there to everybody. It doesn't feel impossible to me at all. I think a 5-1 weekend. I almost picked a 3-0 over the Cardinals because I think that their starting pitching has not been very good. And I think the Reds have been getting a little bit better at getting to the bullpen. So maybe we're just riding high off the Dodgers series and the Reds decide to go 1-5 this week and our hearts are broken again. But we're going to hope against all hope that they win at least 3 games. I think if they can go at least 500 this week, then I think we're going to be in a pretty good spot still for the Reds. And I think Joe and I will be frustrated, but at least not, sad. Very sad.
Well, you mentioned 1-5. I mean, it is true. This team did not die last week, but a 1-5 week. I mean, we're on life support right now. We still need to keep on winning games. If they go 1-5 and they're 24-35 after this week, then yeah, we're going back to what we said. Like, the season might be over, especially when you don't capitalize on these things. If you win at least 3 of these games, you're probably feeling okay. Like, okay, at least we did okay. And if you're feeling winning more than 3, you're feeling really good about things. Whether that's 4, 5, or 6 this week, it would be like a huge turnaround for this team, especially with this schedule we have coming up, where we can keep on rolling with this momentum. So
I love it. Well, guys, I really do appreciate you guys watching, listening, all that jazz. Joe and I always are having fun in these conversations. You guys got to finally see Joe and I a little bit unhinged in a disagreement as well, which I think was very fun, honestly. We'll just maybe never agree on ERA for relievers, and that's okay. It's just going to be the way it goes sometimes. But we do agree on is that we love the Reds and that we're really hoping for a great week for them as we start to hopefully climb our way back into contention and get some of these injuries back like we talked about, Joe. I really think that there's a real world where you get Friedel and at least CES back and Marte and you're feeling a lot better. You splash in McLean there at the end of the season potentially to be that guy that takes over for Marte, to be completely honest with you. I think that'd be the kind of role he would. And you could see the Reds finding a way to the playoffs. That series cannot be understated how big that Dodger series was, guys. So at least, feel a little bit of hope but be ready for it to be dashed because we are Cincinnati fans. So I think that's going to be all for us this week. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. It does mean a lot. It does really help us quite a bit. And yeah, with that, guys, we'll catch you on the next one.